When Blizzard released the Abattoir of Zir, they told us, you can't clear the upper tiers. They knew we would never level our Tears of Blood glyph all the way to level 200 before the end of the season. But the challenge that they set for the min-maxers of this community, little did they know we would get this far with over a month left in the season. Greetings Internet, DDA here, and the first thing I want to do is give a big shout out to Mekuna for making the awesome achievement of clearing tier 24 with a superbly min-maxed Ball Lightning Sorcerer build. I was so excited when I was reading and analyzing the choices that he made. So excited that I just had to release a video talking about kind of the inner workings of the build and how it's all adding together to get us to this point. Now, I do want to mention that Mekuna did say that this is pretty much the limit of Sorceress right now. The only other way that we can get to tier 25, considering I think they're saying that they have 4 times the HP in tier 25 compared to tier 24. The only way we're getting there is if we do level our glyph to level 200. Not sure if someone's going to be able to achieve that before the end of the season. I feel like this build is the limit in terms of min-maxing, and we're going to go over why I think that. But then the glyph is just kind of be there to maybe get us to tier 25 towards the end of the season. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the skills. Pretty standard here for your basic using the Fireball enchantment. Here, again, this is pretty standard. I'm not going to go over things that we kind of know already about the Ball Lightning build. Nothing into Chain Lightning because they don't use the Chain Lightning enchantment, but of course picking up Elemental Dominance for that damage, and then nothing into Potent Warding because he's capping his resistance by other means. So the thing I want to note here, and I'm very glad to see on this perfected build for Ball Lightning, is a completely maxed out Flame Shield. In one of my previous videos, I talked about how I'm coming to realize how important Flame Shield is in the Abattoir because fights are lasting so long, and just being immortal for more time is extremely important. So with the ranks of extra Flame Shield, so he is maxing out Flame Shield, but he's also getting extra ranks from the boots, ranks of Flame Shield there, and then likewise the 4 ranks from the Harlequin Crest. So that's actually getting Flame Shield up to, 13 ranks, I think. 8 plus 5 is 13. Yeah, I got it. So I think it's giving a 3.2 second Flame Shield. So if you basically, that means that if you're hitting Flame Shield on cooldown, you are immortal for more than 25% of your total time. And, unlike the Necromancer builds that the Infinimus builds, they can't perform actions while they're immortal in their Blood Mist. This is allowing us to do everything that we want to do while being immortal. So more than 25% uptime just with the cooldown, and that's not including resets, right? So he has 2 ways he's resetting the defensive skills, the Flame Shield, Elemental Attunement, of course, at 1 point, and then likewise using the Unwavering aspect for the chance to reset the cooldown of defensive skills. So if you just consider the insane uptime, the 3.2 seconds, and then the resets, the double resets that they have, you're reaching probably about 30-40%, maybe even 50% uptime on being immortal inside Flame Shield. Just crazy. So, that allows you to just play so aggressively with this damage while injured build. It allows you to stand on floor explosions. I do it all the time with my Flame Shield. Like, you're Ball Lightning, so you're in the thick of it, and a lot of times, like, you still want to kill the rest of the mobs, and you don't want to move just because there's an explosion by you. Well, just hit Flame Shield. You're immortal for over 3 seconds, so it's fine. So really good to see here, and I just wanted to stress the importance of this, the 25% uptime, and then, even further than that with all the resets. Of course, Glass Cannon, that damage multiplier is needed, and then taking the Shimmering, only 1 point in Elemental Attunement just to save the points. Now here's where we get to the really interesting stuff. So, of course, yeah, you're filling out your protection and your mana shield, that's standard. So taking Ice Blades all the way to summon Ice Blades, and then taking 3 into Conjuration Mastery. And this is where I feel is the height of min-maxing that probably no other build is going to reach. So if you kind of watch this run that he does here, you kind of watch while he's running through the dungeon. You see the Conjuration Mastery down here. It's ticking. He's getting between like 5 to 12 ranks of Conjuration Mastery by summoning the Conjurations. So that is, with the 3% to 6%, you're talking about, between like a 20 to 60% extra multiplicative damage from that. But the really interesting thing, and this is where it gets a little crazy. So if we just skip ahead to the Bloodseeker fight, look at the Conjuration Mastery. 25, 26, 27 ranks of Conjuration Mastery? What? 120% multiplicative damage from a skill? He has 2 tiers of blood glyphs. Alright, this is insane. This is why I'm saying no other build is going to reach this level, because no other build is going to get 120% multiplicative damage. Let me just scroll over here. 25 ranks during the Bloodseeker fight. It's crazy. It's 150% multiplicative damage, people. It is 2 tiers of blood glyphs. So now let's talk about the way that he's achieving this. The way that he's achieving this is by using summoned Ice Blades and basically creating this loop where he's casting almost infinite Ice Blades. And there actually is a break point with Ice Blades where you can pretty much get infinite Ice Blades, because with Enhanced Ice Blades, you're getting 0.5 seconds every time Ice Blades hits an enemy off of its own cooldown. Ice Blades has a cooldown of about 12 seconds. So in theory, if you have around 10 to 15 Ice Blades active, then your Ice Blades only has about a 1 to 2 second cooldown. So it's hard to get up to that threshold, like up to the 10 Ice Blades out. But using the Ice Blade enchantment and some other things that we're going to talk about later, it is achievable. And I want to show this. So just look how fast his Ice Blades is coming back, right? Look at that. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Look at that. It's less than a 2 second cooldown. This is what I'm saying. So when you have this many Ice Blades, you get to the state where it's like permanent Ice Blade. And you're just able to summon so many Ice Blades that they're just refreshing themselves. And you're going into the stars. So that is why the Conjuration Mastery is just supreme here. Because he's reaching a threshold with cooldown reduction that is, and the Ice Blades enchantment as his second enchantment. He's just reaching a threshold that is just allowing him to summon pretty much infinite Ice Blades and get near infinite damage. Not infinite, but, 150% multiplicative extra. So, of course, the combos that you're doing with this, the way that we're achieving this is through the overflowing energy. So, and with the Ice Blades enchantment, right? So the Ice Blades enchantment is every time you spend 20 seconds in cooldown, you summon an Ice Blade. So the overflowing energy is not only giving him a lot of cooldown reduction for his defensive abilities and unstable currents. Unstable currents being an amazing damage active and defense, because you're getting that continuous barrier from spending cooldowns as well with unstable currents. So it's an amazing damage activation, but it's also, this is one of the main ways that he's getting to that infinite Ice Blade level by having the cooldown resets on things like teleport and unstable currents, and then and continuously using them, so then it's summoning more Ice Blades. Because again, like, you're reaching a threshold basically, and that's why he's only getting the 5 to 10 Ice Blades or Conjuration Mastery when mobbing, because it's like a slow ramp basically. Because once you get to the point where you have enough Ice Blades out, that's when you go off. Because then that's when they're just auto-refreshing their cooldown. You're just summon. So again, I just want to stress how amazing and just honestly just genius this is. I love it so much. It's just, it goes to show, I feel like the history that we've done with the Sorcerer is that we're all building on each other's knowledge, and the build is just kind of slowly getting better over time. And this jump here is just the main jump that I think no one's going to be able to get past. I actually considered doing 2 sections of this video to talk about another endgame build I've been seeing that actually goes with Ranks of Devouring Blaze on the amulet instead of the Conjuration Mastery. And then you use Fists of Fate for extra immobilized triggers, and then that therefore buffs up Devouring Blaze to the 10% versus the 7. So if you just have 10 summons of in play with the 3 ranks of Conjuration Mastery, you're meeting the level of Devouring Blaze. Any additional summons that you have in play above 10 is exceeding, right? It's exceeding the power of getting ranks of Devouring Blaze on your amulet. That's why this is key, because he's getting between 5 to 10, maybe 12 during mobbing, but during the Bloodseeker fight, the 25. So it's more than almost tripling the impact of this ability versus, say, having Devouring Blaze on there. That's why I don't think any other build is going to touch this. So moving down, we have the 3 in Icy Veil. Again, like, this is a damage while injured build, so they're going to have the 3 in the Icy Veil for just the extra defense. Duration, it just helps with the rotation, because if the barrier would ever fall off, they would instantly die. So this Icy Veil is just kind of to help the rotation. Still getting the Devouring Blaze because, hey, 21% multiplier is a 21% multiplier. And then, of course, standard here for Ball Lightning going with the Wizards, and then getting the Invigorating Conduit for the Crackling Energy mana. Now, the Crackling Energy mana is the main mana regeneration in this build, but there is another mana regeneration in this build that's actually based on a bug. So Frigid Breeze is in here that cold damage against vulnerable enemies have 20% chance to generate 15 mana. This is bugged right now, is actually activating with all damage and not just cold damage. So it's actually at a pretty high percent. 20% is a pretty high lucky hit chance if you compare it to lucky hit restore resource, right? And it's a similar amount of mana too. Lucky hit restore resource, I think, goes up to 25 or 26% of your mana. So it's that's a little more, but this is 4 times the chance. So that, I mean, that alone just shows you the effective mana that this is giving you versus, say, a lucky hit restore resource. And he doesn't even have precision magic in here, right? Because, again, Ball Lightning's lucky hit chance is really low. Like, look at that, 5%. Really, really low. So you're just kind of banking on the fact that Ball Lightning is hitting so many times that eventually this will trigger. And at 20%, again, it's pretty high. So you can kind of guarantee that this will trigger a fair amount. I like this compared to the lucky hit restore resource. That's good. So then likewise, we're going all the way down with Unstable Currents here to the extra ticking, the faster ticking. Again, this is just for the cooldown reduction on Overflowing Energy. Trying to, reach that threshold. Conjuration Mastery is our main multiplicative damage in here, 150%. I mean, you got Tears of Blood, and then that. It's crazy. But, you know, and this is one of the ways that you achieve that, just by using the Overflowing Energy and then the Supreme Unstable Currents. You pretty much have 100% uptime on Unstable Currents, and I think Crackling Energy ticks twice a second, I think, around there. So 25% faster is pretty good. You know, you're getting close to, what is it, close to 3 times a second, maybe 2.5. So next up, we want to talk about the gear that we have here. Really interesting, again. Of course, going with the Harlequin Crest, best in slot for every build. Damage reduction, +4 all skills. Can't go wrong with it. Really, really strong. Raiment of the Infinite, I want to talk about this because I've done a lot of testing myself. Currently, I want to say hard stuck. I am hard stuck on tier 14 with my Ball Lightning because I don't want to do the snapshotting. I think it's really cheese. And just really unintended, and I understand everyone is doing it, and that's a major point with this build and with using Raiment of the Infinite. Not only is it is a damage while injured build, so you're getting the damage while injured on the boots, and you're getting the damage while injured on the pants, for totaling 86.6% damage reduction while injured. Of course, that's affected by diminishing returns. So you're probably getting more towards like 70 or 80% damage reduction. So even with that, though, you still need to snapshot the Mage Lords with Veer's Mastery. in order to run this Raiment of the Infinite. And I know this because I am trying to run Raiment myself at tier 14, and I keep getting one-shot even when I'm snapshotting Vir's Mastery. I have tested it, and I'm still getting one-shot with the extra ranks and Glass Cannon, with losing all that defense. I think the only way that they're really achieving this at the highest levels of play is having that 80%, the damage while injured build. It's just such a high damage reduction. You're getting 46% damage reduction from close from the Vir's Mastery Mage Lords aspect. So that's a lot in itself, but then, blanketed with an additional 80% damage reduction while injured, it allows you to play this. So then, of course, I wanted to show why he's playing Raiment. It's just such a good showcase here. Like, he's pulling all the mobs together, of course, and then once the mobs start to get unstoppable, he moves on to the next group to make a bigger pull, and just being able to suck everything in and really maximize the AoE damage of the ball lightning. I just want to show this big, look at that big pull. It's so beautiful. Look at these big pull-ins from Raiment. This is what is really maximizing the damage, because if you just try to kill a single mob, it's not going to really work. You really need to utilize multiple damages. You see how long it takes him to kill the elites at this level. So if he wasn't doing those big pulls with the trash mobs and wasn't getting all those minor kills before killing the long elite fights, you wouldn't be able to make time. So that's why you really need Raiment, because there's a lot of things moving around. So this is another limitation of any build that's not going to be injured and not be a damage while injured build. Because I'm not saying we can't use Raiment in non-damage while injured, damage reduction while injured builds. I'm not saying we can't. I think maybe there's a build out there that could do it. I haven't found it yet personally, even when snapshotting Vir's Mastery. It's tough. Raiment adds a lot of damage to you by losing 4 defensive slots, and then the extra 6% damage on yourself too. So being that non-damage while injured builds are really struggling to use Raiment, I think there is a limit of builds that do not use Raiment, because you need that pull-in. Necros have it. I think that's probably one of the reasons why Necros are seeing so much success, so much more success than we thought they were going to have, because they're not reaching Sorc or Barb level, but they're still getting the upper teens done. They're still doing really well in the Abattoir. And I think the reason for that is because they have Grasping Veins, and they have their Corpse Tendrils that is serving the purpose that Raiment serves for the Sorc. But I think probably the limit, if we're not using Raiment, there is an upper limit, and not damage reduction while injured. I think the limit for a non-DR injured build, non-Raiment, would probably be about tier 19. I think we're going to see that. I would be very impressed if I saw a tier 20 or tier 21 clear with a non-DR while injured build, just overall. So going over the gloves here, he uses Inner Calm for the extra damage, but he does mention that you can swap Inner Calm for the Elementalist aspect, which is, I think, definitely a viable option here. His crit is so low. His crit is probably around 40% just standing still. So that's a pretty low crit chance, which is why it's mentioned about the Elementalist aspect, because that would get you up to the 80%. But I think if you're going to run the Elementalist aspect here instead of the Inner Calm, you might want to switch out the crit strike chance against injured enemies for Lucky Hit Restore Resource, because you're going to need to stay at the maximum resource. Like, you want to be there as much as possible. So I would say that a more useful stat on here may be Lucky Hit Restore Resource, just because if you're going to use Elementalists, you're going to need to add some things into this build to make sure you stay at maximum resource. Really interesting here. I love this so much. I love that I see Unwavering on here. And this is so deceptively good as a power. The reason why I say it's deceptively good is, like, you read this, the Unwavering, 6% chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills. You read this and think, wow, that's a good defensive ability. But no, it's not just a defensive ability. It's actually an offensive ability with the Ice Blades enchantment. Because again, which we talked earlier about that 120, 150% multiplier. If you want to reach the threshold of infinite Ice Blade summoning, you need to use as much cooldowns as possible. You need to summon as much Ice Blades as you can initially to reach that upper threshold, the 10 to 15 Ice Blades in play. That's when you're going to go off with this. Okay? And one of the ways you do that is with Aspect of the Unwavering resets on your defensive skills, on your flame shields, your ice armor, your teleports. You're using more of them. You are summoning more initial Ice Blades, reaching that threshold of infinite Ice Blades faster. So this ability is just so massive. It's so beautiful to see on here, because you look at this and you think, well, yeah, he's going to have that for the defense. But it's not just defense, it's damage too. Everything else here for the gear, at least on this side, is pretty standard. You know, exploiters on the boots, that makes sense. It gives you an extra 40% multiplier when things are unstoppable, and when with the level of CC that you have with this build, it happens a lot. Unstoppable happens a lot, especially during the Bloodseekers. So the extra 40% multiplier on the boots is huge, just kind of cranking out extra damage numbers. Gravitational on the weapon makes sense. Those stats are standard on the weapon. Nothing really crazy there going on. The amulet, again, we talked about the Conjuration Mastery. Cooldown reduction, again, reaching that. Not only is it defensive, not only is cooldown reduction a defensive ability, but it's also offensive here because of, again, reaching that threshold, using the cooldowns. Very, very strong. And you got Storm Swell on here. It's not the highest percentage number that you can put on the amulet. That would probably be Control, right? But it has the highest uptime. It's pretty much 100% uptime, where Control doesn't have 100% uptime. It's maybe closer to like 50, 60, 70% uptime, because once they're unstoppable, then obviously they're not, they can't be CC'd. So you go with the Storm Swell to have the 100% uptime on the 45% extra damage. So again, Aspect of the Control, it has you have a fair amount of CC uptime in this build with Raiment. So this happens a lot. It's often, and 35% multiplicative damage is huge for an Aspect. So this is really good. One curious thing I have here, that he's picking up max life on the ring. I was kind of curious as to why that choice was made, because, you know, being a damage while injured build, the max life is only giving you like 200 or like 300 HP in the injured threshold. I think the reason that it's on here is because it gives you more barrier level. Your maximum, you can only have as much barrier as your maximum life. So adding to your maximum life is giving you more of a maximum barrier. So I'm thinking that's why he has max life here on the ring. I'm not sure. Maybe a damage stat would be better. Maybe there would be too many one-shots, but I'm not sure. So then again, Talrasha's here, pretty standard. Really standard here, the highest multiplier that we can have on a ring. And then again, Conceited on the offhand, really standard here. Crit strike chance, double mana, mana cost reduction, resource gen. Need those both for ball lightning. That's very standard. And then cooldown reduction again, because cooldown is just such an amazing stat for this infinite Ice Blade build. With the Conjuration Mastery, so it's just such a good stat to have here. Now, going over the Vampiric Powers, I just want to make some notes. Going with a full damage setup, every single power that's on this board is giving damage. No defensive powers. Again, getting all the defense from the damage while injured. A worthy note here is that a lot of people are doing the Infection swap. So you start the board with Infection in, get the 4 stacks of Talrashas, and then switch off Infection for Domination. So that is a way to just squeak out an extra 15% multiplier, which actually makes a big difference. So I've been seeing a lot of people do this in the upper tiers. I practice with it myself. It works out great. So, you know, if you're trying to push yourself to that next level, I recommend you trying it out. Of course, Feed the Coven here for the extra mana regeneration and extra 10% multiplicative damage. Can't go wrong with 10% extra multiplicative damage, right? And mana regeneration. We need it somewhere. So there's a lack of Metamorphosis on this build. Doesn't need the Unstoppable of that, because Flame Shield, again, Flame Shield has like close to close to a 40-50% uptime in this build. So why do you need Metamorphosis when you have Flame Shield always? So going with the Accursed Touch, Prey on the Weak combo for the vulnerable application. And one thing I want to note about this, because something I said in a previous video was, I think we're going to start seeing more people go with the Metamorphosis and then go with the Prey on the Weak for vulnerable application versus the Accursed Touch. And I just want to note how important this specific combo is for this build, because the Ice Blades is only getting cooldown reduced by 0.5 when it hits a vulnerable enemy. So that makes it really easy. The Accursed Touch, Prey on the Weak, makes it really easy to get that maximum level of Ice Blade cooldown reduction for that infinite Ice Blade threshold that we're talking about. So like that is one of the, I think this combo is one of the main ways that it's done. Applying vulnerable on everything, because the Ice Blades are kind of sit on the outer ring of the mob pulls that you're doing and kind of attack the outside. And also Vampiric Vampiric Curse has 100% duration. It just lasts forever. As soon as you apply Vamp Curse on something, it's just always Vamp Cursed. And then therefore it's always vulnerable, right? So it's just a very consistent way to get those resets on Ice Blade, that I think that's the main reason why this combo is used. It's just easy to do. So I think that's mainly why this is in here. Because we do have other options for vulnerable, right? And like you could even argue that Ice Blades itself makes vulnerable. So if you have a lot of Ice Blades out, you have permanent vulnerable on single targets, on a low number of enemies, the Bloodseekers. But again, I think the main reason why this combo is used is just for ease of use and ease of getting to that upper threshold of Ice Blade summoning. So, of course, another option that's good for damage while injured build is Resilience, because you pretty much always have, it's like, you know, an extra, I don't even know how much DR it is, but it's a lot. It's like 30 or 40% DR that you're getting from Resilience, but it's not in here because it doesn't need it. You have enough DR in the build, and then just going pure, utter damage on the Vamp Powers. So going over the Paragon board briefly, I'll link this build in the description so you can look at the build, and if you want to review the Paragon board in more detail, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I want to note some things and note some choices that are made. So one of the big choices I see is there's a severe lack of Resistall in this Paragon board choices. So there's just not picking up any of the Resistall here, not picking up any of the Resistall here. So, like, there's a lot of Resistall that's missing, and that is mitigated by the fact that they're using diamonds in the jewelry. And the way that they're getting away with this is because they're not using skulls, they're just foregoing armor. They're saying, okay, forget armor, don't care. You know, I'm using raiment, I'm using Shaco, my armor's going to be super low, I'm losing all these armor rolls. All right, why even try? Damage while injured. 100%. So just giving up the armor, because, you know, the difference between 5k armor and 6k armor is not that much. So if you would squeak out extra armor points here with skulls, it just wouldn't have that much of an impact. So just saying in the Paragon board, okay, I am just going to I'm just going to forget armor, put resistance in my gems, and that's going to free me up some points in the Paragon board. The other thing I want to note about the Paragon board is he's picking up a lot of maximum mana, you know, getting all this maximum mana in, the Elemental Summoner board, and then getting all the maximum mana likewise in here in the Static Surge board. So, you know, getting a lot of maximum mana. I just want to note why this works and why this is a good thing, because he literally has nothing in his build that is comboing off of maximum mana. No Elementalist Aspect, although if you would switch to Elementalist Aspect, you would absolutely need these maximum mana nodes. No Elementalist Aspect, no Lucky Hit Restore Resource. Quite literally, the only reason why maximum mana is in here is because when you're summoning a lot of Crackling Energy, it's super easy to pick up like 10 Crackling Energy, or like 5 Crackling Energy. And then just like your mana bar just shoots the full, right? You're over picking up Crackling Energy. There's so much of it everywhere. So the extra maximum mana is giving you more of a place for the Crackling Energy mana to go. So it's like an indirect form of mana regeneration. So it's not, because maximum mana does not increase your mana regeneration, what it's doing for these builds for their mana regeneration is, again, the crackling energy. There's so much of it that it's just giving more of a place for the mana to go. So it's like it's letting the crackling energy have more of an impact on your mana regeneration. The other thing I wanted to note here is that he has the Tears of Blood glyph at level 50 in the static surge board. And if you saw one of my previous videos where I talked about the Tears of Blood glyph and where it's going to go, this wasn't even a consideration of mine, and the reason for that is because of the 2 rare nodes that it's plussing. This is getting the actual lightning resistance is pretty much useless. It's pretty much useless. And then the damage to stun enemies is good, but again, you're talking about only about a 60 or 70% uptime of where this is actually adding damage. But the reason that he has the Tears of Blood glyph in this node, in this board, is because there's actually 32 normal core stat nodes, which is 2 more core stat nodes than the Burning Instinct board, which is the board that I concluded as the best board for this glyph. So those 2 extra core stat nodes is giving you an extra 5 to 6% multiplicative damage. And the reason that this is a good choice for this build, the damage while injured build, is the reason that you would want to put Tears of Blood in Burning Instinct is because after it reaches level 80, you have an amazing amount of damage reduction from the damage reduction from burning enemies node in the Burning Instinct. So you're basically trading more useful nodes, damage reduction, from Burning Instinct or say Icefall, for an extra 5 to 6% multiplicative damage. So the reason this choice is made in this build is because, again, he doesn't need damage reduction. He has 80% damage reduction from damage while injured. So he can just give up the damage reduction you would get from Burning Instinct or from Icefall and say, okay, I prefer the extra 5% or 6% multiplicative damage from the extra 2 core stat nodes. So the superior choice, definitely, when it comes to damage while injured builds, for sure, that don't need the damage reduction. The other thing I want to note here is how much points he's spending to optimize the destruction glyph. He's spending a lot of points, like going down and getting this extra dex here, spending a point on intelligence that is necessarily not needed. Again, going over here, spending another point on intelligence. Like, I know these are like minor differences, but when you talk about like the upper echelon of damage and like spending an extra point to get what you actually want, it matters a lot. So the fact that this is being done to get the total of, I think, 44 dexterity in this board to add to the destruction glyph, that's noteworthy. That is really noteworthy, and it just kind of shows the power of the, adding up all the damage. Like we're getting an insane amount of damage from the Tears of Blood glyph. We're getting an insane amount of damage from the Conjuration Mastery, and just kind of adding that critical damage multiplier at a higher level is really worth it to spend the extra points. The other thing I want to note about one of the final boards that he has in here is the use of the charged glyph here. Now, the kind of question, I kind of looked at this and I kind of looked at it sideways. I understand why. It's an extra 5% multiplicative damage over most of the other glyphs. So if you would say compare this to the exploit glyph, for example, exploit would only give you 10% multiplier. This is giving you 15, so it's 5% more. And I guess the question is, because the crackling energy damage, that's just more negligible than I could possibly explain to you. It does nothing. There's that you could just ignore that top end. This glyph is literally just in here for the 15%. So I guess the question is 5% multiplicative damage worth 40% additive vulnerable damage? It's close to me. But I think the real reason why he's putting it in here is how easy it is to activate and how many points he's saving. Because this is intelligence, in the Frigid Fate board, you're forced to go through this node here. You're forced to go through. So you're already picking up this 10 intelligence here. And with the 3 intelligence nodes that are right by, you're going to want to go into Frigid Fate for the legendary node. So it's just so easy to activate an intelligence glyph in here with a very minimal amount of points, and I think that's one of the main reasons. It may be higher damage just by a very minor threshold. I'm not sure about that, though. I would actually want to test out to see. So that's it. That is the tier 24 clear build analysis that Random Number Gaming is putting out for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun analyzing the decisions that this build made. Really good job, Mekuna, for putting this out and making this huge achievement. I think he is correct to say that we probably won't see a tier 25 clear on the Sorc. Maybe with a maxed out glyph at the very end of the season. But this is pushing the Sorc's damage level to a level that I have never seen. It's massive, and I commend Mekuna for this, and just a really great achievement, and is one for the record books. So kudos. I think this analysis and the way that they're doing things at the top, the 0.1 or the 0.01% of Sorcs, is really going to change our mentality of how we look at different builds. So if you like this video, please hit that like button. Hit subscribe for all the best Diablo guides. And as always, turn your dial to Random Number Gaming for weekly updates on Diablo 4.